I remember getting lost among the airplanes at the Henry Ford Museum when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I was looking up at the planes and then I looked around for my parents and realized they were no longer there. And instead of going and asking for help from a responsible looking adult, as my parents had coached me to do, I hid in a corner and cried. Eventually, a security guard found me and walked me, a sobbing, tear stained child, over to the information desk where I was reunited with my family. My mom hugged me and said, "We would never leave without you. We will always find you." I can attest that being a parent is certainly full of joy, but it is also often terrifying. As our own kids increase in their independence, I have to simply trust that they will follow the lessons we've taught them about how to cross the street, how to ask for help, and how to find their way. I've looked up from reading and interpretation at a museum so many times now and found my child gone because they have things they want to look at too. And as they get older and more independent, I find I'm more able to tolerate the fact that they need to be able to wander and that they have to be able to roam and come back and meet at certain times because we are raising them to be safe, I hope, but also independent. Importantly, we always find our way back to each other. Apart from my children, though, I am a person who tends to lose things. My keys have to go back on the hook or I will spend 20 minutes looking for them because I won't remember where I set them down. I am famous, at least in my own mind, for putting important things in safe places and forgetting where that safe place is. I recently found my grandmother's German prayer book that a family friend sent to me in its original envelope on a shelf in my office. I had stuck it there during the height of the pandemic, thinking I would certainly remember where I had put it, but of course I didn't, and I'd been at least casually looking for it for years since. Now I need to sit down and write a sheepish thank you note to my dad's incredibly thoughtful friend. When I misplaced something essential, keys, wallet, phone, it's all consuming because I need those things to open doors, buy things, and communicate. Like the woman who has lost one of her 10 coins, I will search high and low underneath couch cushions and retrace my steps until I have found what I need to get on with my life. But if it's something I don't need immediately or whose absence I don't feel so starkly, it's easier for it to get really lost. My kids asked me about 9/11 last week because they've been talking about it in class at school. I was a junior at U of M, and what I remember about that day was how in the immediate aftermath, we all came together. Students gathered for a huge vigil on the Diag after having huddled around our TV screens watching the 24-hour news cycle together. A few days afterward, the two orchestras of the School of Music pulled together a special concert. Hill Auditorium, which has over 4,000 seats, was completely full with standing room only. In those days, immediately following that violent tragedy, we pulled together across our differences and showed up for each other. The news showed endless lines of people waiting to give blood, and neighbors collected money and items for people displaced and impacted by the collapse of the towers. But of course, we didn't stay that way. Speeches calling for unity gave way to rhetoric that sought to blame. Our president at the time started a war under false pretenses. Hate crimes against Muslims and Sikhs skyrocketed. We let fear rule us, and that posture of fear allowed an opening for increasingly divisive rhetoric and zero-sum thinking. Against the backdrop of the war on terror, social media, which started as a way of finding and furthering connections, served to separate us into our ideological camps by feeding us information that affirmed our worldview and demonized the people who disagreed with us. Algorithms designed to fuel our anger deepened the divide even further because it turns out that anger holds our attention much better than kitten videos or stories about the good in the world. It's not just 9/11 that did it, but we have lost something vital over these past decades. We have become so entrenched in our silos that we no longer share a common set of facts, and encountering someone with a wildly different opinion or worldview feels like a full frontal attack. We are no longer able to speak to each other across differences about the things that matter most. It's comfortable to be in conversation with people I know agree with me completely, and it's uncomfortable to be challenged. A wise person once asked me, "Do you want to be right or do you want to be effective?" It feels good to be right. I know I love it, but if my primary concern in a conversation is my rightness, do I ever listen to my conversation partner's real concerns? Do I ask thoughtful questions to help them unpack what they've just said, or do I simply shut down the conversation entirely? And where does that get us? Importantly, do we care enough about each other to put aside our own desire for comfort and commit to learning how to listen to our neighbors again and speak so others can hear. The woman who was missing a coin dropped everything and cleaned her whole house to look for it. The coin Jesus was describing was worth about 1 day's wages, presumably a man's wages. And if you had just lost 10% of your liquid assets, that would be a pretty huge deal. So it's no wonder she dropped everything to find it and rejoiced when she did. The question Jesus might be asking us is, what have we lost? Do we think it's worth dropping everything to find it? It's a risk to decide that something is worth putting aside everything else to get back. The shepherd in this passage left 99 other sheep to look for one, running the risk, of course, that she would lose the other sheep when she got back from finding that erstwhile lamb. But God takes that risk for us. God extends a welcome that is more than just opening the doors and hoping we might walk in. God meets us in places where we don't even expect to be found. And yeah, it can feel a little uncanny, weird, like finding something you didn't even realize you were looking for. For a lot of us, faith is like that, even if it's something that's always been a part of your life, like the air you breathe. But for many, it's a new thing, something gently nagging you, reminding you of its existence. Maybe you're not even sure why it might be important to you. The reason to be a part of this communal faith is not because religion has all the answers, but because in a community you can find new and meaningful ways to live out your faith, and new and meaningful questions to ask, strengthened by the knowledge that you're surrounded and found by love. At the beginning of this passage, people are criticizing Jesus for eating with tax collectors and sinners. The Jewish food laws were meant to set the people of Israel apart from everyone else, to help ensure that meals and the community formed around them included only the people who were right with God. But here Jesus was eating with tax collectors and sinners, people who might or might not actually be following those laws, eating with people whose livelihood contributed to the marginalization of Jewish culture and life, since tax collectors worked for Rome, and sinners would have defined as anyone who wasn't following the law. Jesus was willing to break the law and social taboos, and he was even willing to risk God's potential disfavor in order to bridge the gap, in order to seek out and find those in need of God's love, those children of God who were lost. Jesus intentionally created community across religious and ideological divides in order to build God's kingdom here on earth. God's invitation into this place, into this community, and to the table at communion is not just a wave from across the room. God goes and finds you, even when you're positive there can't possibly be a place for you here. But God never stops looking for us. God will always find us. God reaches out and says, you already belong here. Because even if you've been told you don't belong anywhere, or if you've just been feeling that way, remember that you are loved and that you do belong. This is Christ's church, and there's a place for you here. As followers of Jesus, we are called into this life of intentional, risky welcome. It's vulnerable and it is hard work, but it is also God's work. And it's one of the ways we are called to make our world a better place for everyone in it right now. It's true that we have lost so much, but Jesus reminds us that even something we thought was lost forever can be found. Amen.